Here we are, back for part 3, and you're back for more. And you could be back. That's because you liked and subscribed. You should. It really helps me out. Isn't that what everybody else says? I've said it a few times too, I guess. So, I just want to be on the hype train. So, you've probably heard that human population growth is exponential. Most populations, if you're going to look at it in a certain way, are going to create an exponential growth. Like if you look at bacteria populations, there's a level of exponential growth, then they reach or usually surpass K, which is carrying capacity of the environment, and then you have like a stabilizing period, and eventually you could have a fall, a die-off, depending. That sounds lovely and not at all scary, right? I remember in high school my teacher saying this is the only time in recorded history that the population of Earth went down was during the Black Death, the plague. And here you can see the Industrial Revolution happened, and like from there, whoop, we just have had like a spike in population. And so we're not totally sure, where we're going to end up. What is K of Earth for humans, the carrying capacity? Are we at it now? Are we going to surpass it? We're going to do a couple experiments when it comes to thinking about population growth, especially when we talk about populations, because a lot of people will say, well, we're overpopulated, we're this, we're that. People will be like, no, there's lots of room, there's this, there's that. You know what, we'll save that for when we talk about populations and population growth. So affluence, having wealth, has harmful and beneficial environmental effects. So let's talk about harmful effects. So there's high levels of consumption. People want stuff and things. I mean, I've got stuff all around me. I've got too much stuff. But so people want lots of stuff. So then that stuff has to get produced, and that makes high levels of pollution, and it's an unnecessary waste of resources. I don't need this picture to make my life complete or to be able to teach you or do my job. Does it look nice and add to my room and my background? Sure, but it's unnecessary. So I'm not saying to have nothing and to live like this Spartan life where you have nothing, but we need to really, everybody, not just you and me, but we all need to take a look at what we consume, what products we consume. Are they good for the environment? That's a long discussion we'll have in class. Affluence can provide funding for developing technologies. Isn't it nice when people come in and visit? So this is a good thing. So when there's wealth, people have more money to like say, hey, pollution's bad. Let's look at some ways that we can reduce pollution. Let's put some money towards that because we have extra money. Let's not tear down this forest. We'll make something else, or we'll leave this here. Let's not waste these resources. So we can add money to develop technology so we stop those things. So it's like, the classic phrase, it's a double-edged sword. Poverty, though, has harmful economic and health benefits. So generally people in poverty-stricken areas have larger populations. Their population growth is effective. There's malnutrition. There's premature death. There's limited access to clean water and sanitation facilities, which can lead to other diseases. So poverty is terrible. It's terrible in all ways and shapes and forms. It's horrible. It's not really considered enough in a lot of ways. It affects education. Like being a teacher, I read a lot about how poverty affects student learning and education. It should be treated like a disease almost. But again, another discussion to have. Like, in our society that we live in, we seem to value money and things and having money, and it's sort of almost a competition to get more. And think of like the tragedy of the commons. Like, I need this money. Well, okay, well, someone else doesn't have it then. Well, but I have it. I need it. My family needs that. What's going to hurt others? Well, it sucks to be them. How do we fix it? I don't know. I'm not trying to be like, well, there's no fix. I don't know how you can fix that. That's going to take a cultural shift like in the world, because we all have to really look out for each other. And I mean, that's how we are. We kind of look out for ourselves, which you need to do. You can't put, you can't forget about yourself. You need to care for yourself, self-care. But you can't put the needs of the self over the needs of everyone all the time. You can't. There's lots of people that live in extreme poverty, and it's terrible. If you've ever looked at these things or watched videos and stuff, it changes you in a way, because you're like, I need to do something. I can't just sit here. I have to help these people, because it's awful. It's awful to see the kind of conditions other people have to live in and were born into. So I don't want to get too much into it and talk now, because it's actually very, like, I don't like talking about it. But I really encourage you to watch things. I can provide you links and videos and articles about it, where you can look at the kind of lives people live. It'll really make you grateful for anything that you have, and make you want to change things for others. So let's take a minute and look at just the harmful effects of poverty and the kind of things people around us live in. So 2.6 billion, over a third of people on Earth don't have access to adequate sanitation, so cleaning facilities to give them things like clean water. Not enough fuel for heating and cooking. No, lack of access to electricity. 2 billion people on Earth. Almost a third of people on Earth don't have electricity. What? Like, you hear that and you're like, no, that can't be right. Like, what? There's so much around us that we have. How can we not provide them electricity? People in extreme poverty don't have access to clean drinking water or adequate health care. There's people in this country that seem to not have access to adequate health care, so I feel like this number is even low. Or adequate housing or enough food for good health. And the effects of these things, like malnutrition, are horrible. Very horrible. Let's move on, because it's hard to talk about these things. It's hard for me to talk about these things. And when you learn about these things, it's hard to stay quiet and not want to really do something. But poverty in general, and poverty in the extreme, is just awful, and the effects that it has on like our fellow humans is terrible. And we need to work to like I said, have like this sustainable revolution where we fix all these things. And I don't really know how to go about doing that. I think it's going to take like voices from all over the world rising up to finally like change things. But let's talk about this other problem, about prices that not including the value of natural capital. So like my Arizona diet green tea with ginseng is only 99 cents. Get yours today, okay? If I will never be like a big YouTube channel, and I will never be sponsored. But gosh, if I ever got sponsored one day, please let it be by Arizona. Anyway, I'm not trying to call out their company in particular or anything, so maybe I'll change that to, I don't know, like a coffee company. Like, if you imagine I have like a paper coffee cup, and maybe my cup of coffee costs like, like it's just regular coffee, not one of the venti double chai soy latte whip thingy with chocolate and other on it. I drink coffee, just not that kind, all right? Let's pretend this is like just a paper coffee cup with my $2 coffee inside and cream. Well, that doesn't include so a lot went into that. There's a plastic lid on my paper coffee cup. There's the paper cup, so there's the plastic. There's the tree that needed to make the paper. There's the farmer that planted and harvested the coffee beans, and then the shipment of that coffee, because coffee's not grown around here. The shipment of that coffee across land or ocean to get to us, which causes pollution because of the combustion of the engine and the burning of the fossil fuel. Then there's the workers that had to drive to work to produce my coffee and pour it and sell it to me. You almost are like, how could they even sell it for $2 when all of that goes into it? But they don't include like the environmental costs, like farming. Like, are they using sustainable farming practices? Maybe not. If it's not farmed in this country, maybe not. They don't include the harmful environmental costs, like the pollution from transporting that. through the burning of fossil fuels. Companies then receive tax breaks and subsidies for the different things that they do and how they do things. So they get to make more money or bring more of their money home. And so that might stimulate the economy to make more people produce stuff or whatever, but it's gonna lead to a degradation of natural capital. And so people will say like, well, do you not want the economy? Do you want to not have money? And look, I'm not gonna sit here and say I have all the answers, but like we have to do things in a different way. What way? I don't know. That's for smart people to have a talk about, and that's for us to get smarter and try to talk about and try to figure out what ways can we be sustainable and also be producing things that people want and making money. It might be that we just don't make as much money as we used to. You know what I mean? Like companies just don't make these trillions or billions of dollars a year that they do. They make less. And I know that that's not something they want or that stockholders want. It's complicated. We'll just go with that and say it's complicated. So yeah, and not environmentally friendly at all, with the amount of gas it's going to use and the amount of when that gasoline combusts, the amount of pollutants that go into the air. Not environmentally friendly. So let's look at some different views about environmental problems and their solutions. And you can pause. I'll give you a second to pause here and kind of look at these before we go over them. So let me just kind of tell you about them. So there's environmental ethics, what's right and wrong with how we treat the environment. So anytime you think about ethics, they're talking about how basically like what's right and wrong. Planetary management worldview, it's the idea that we're separate from and in charge of nature. I kind of don't really agree with that. Like, I don't think we're separate from nature. I think we're very intricately tied to all the biotic and abiotic factors. Then there's the stewardship worldview, that we manage Earth for our benefit with ethical responsibility to be stewards. I think that's a little bit closer, because we do need to be stewards of the environment. And then there's the environmental wisdom worldview, that we are part of nature and must engage in sustainable use. So, maybe there's good ideas from all of these things. So, what is an environmentally sustainable society? Living sustainably means living off of Earth's natural income without depleting or degrading its natural capital that supplies it. So basically living within our means. So same thing if you want to think of it, our natural capital that's around us in the environment. If you want to think of that as capital that comes in when you're working a job. Again, if I make $100 a week, as a teacher, you make that much a week? Nope. These are jokes. They're not good. But anyway, if you're making $100 a week, but you're spending $150 a week, you're charging up $150 a week. Eventually, when that credit card bill comes, you're gonna be like, yeah, I can't pay that. I didn't make enough to pay it. I don't have that money. That's what we're doing now. It's not sustainable. You spending more than you make is not sustainable. You're gonna get into debt. And for the earth, we're going to have a whole host of problems. Environmentally sustainable societies protect natural capital and live off of its income. So what's an environmentally sustainable society? They meet their current needs of their population while ensuring the needs of future generations will be met. So we're not sacrificing the future for now. Meaning like, okay, well, unsustainable would be like, okay, well, we're using this amount of this forest and this water, and we can sustain the people that are there now. But in the future, maybe that water resource is going to get depleted, or they're not replanting the trees, or they won't grow quickly enough to replenish the forest, and so it's going to be gone in the future. That's not sustainable. So we have to live on natural income of our natural capital without diminishing it. So we're doing that now. We're diminishing our natural capital. So we need to really change. And I think that's what a lot of people don't like to hear, because change is hard, or they don't know where to start or what to do. Or really the fact is, yes, all people need to change, but also these large corporations need to change, and governments need to put in potentially put in regulations to make these companies change or make it hard for them to do business the way that they're doing now. But we can work together to solve environmental problems. Yay! So social capital, it encourages openness and communication and cooperation and hope. And it discourages closed-mindedness and polarization, confrontation, fear. I feel like when you watch the news, you see so much of this. People don't want to hear from anyone else. I don't want to hear from a child about climate change. Oh, well, some scientists say this and that. Well, or what do you mean you're going to make me wear a mask and all this other stuff? I feel like we see so much of this now, and it's pushed on us, through whatever social media, regular media, I don't know. But let's try to have some social capital. Let's try to encourage being open in communication, and to cooperate with each other and have hope for the future. I mean, because there's a lot of times where it looks a little scary, but we have to hope that we can work together and make things better. So we can talk about Chattanooga, Tennessee. I was actually there last summer 2019. And they're an environmental success story. And it was cool. It's a nice city. It looks clean. It's on the river. I saw a lot of people biking, and there was a lot of places to bike and put your bikes and stuff. So maybe encouraging people to use public transport or to use bicycles instead of using their cars. In 1960, it was the most polluted city in the U.S. I'll have to tell you another story because I live and grew up in the Northeast, about the Lake Erie that caught on fire. Buffalo, that part of Lake Erie is still but the other side, the Ohio side, is actually really nice. So anyway, back to Chattanooga. In 1984, they had they developed this Vision 2000, where they kind of had this plan of how they were going to change and make things better. In 1995, by then most of their goals were met. So I know this should be revised a little bit. So in 1993, they wrote Revision 2000. So they were seeing that, hey, we're meeting a lot of our goals, and we're getting to this point. Let's try to make some different points here, and let's try to rewrite some things to make this easier, so that way we really can make this vision or exceed it. And in 1995, most of the goals that they set out to do were met. So there are lots of success stories in the environment. There's lots of bad stories, but there are lots of success stories too. So if you get worried as we go through class, I'm going to really try to remind you that there are success stories and things that people have done to protect the environment and make things better. So here it is. Here's Chattanooga. It's like mountainous there. It's actually really cool. It was nice to visit there. So individuals matter. Like, people are like, well, I'm one person, my voice, no one's going to listen to me. I'm a kid, I'm this, I'm that. But about 5 to 10% of the population of an area can bring about major change. They have to be vocal, though. Not to scare you, because remember, we're going to try to have some social capital where we're trying to have hope and openness and communication. But we really only have about 50 to 100 years to make the change to sustainability before we hit that tipping point. That's could be in our lifetimes. I don't want to see that happen. I don't want to see a world where my child has to worry about, well, the environment's completely wrecked and there's going to be a lot of natural disasters and a lot of bad things coming. I don't want that for my children. I don't want that for you. I don't want that for anybody. So we need to use our knowledge that we're going to get in this course to make our lives better and to educate others. We need to really rely on renewable energy. We have to protect biodiversity. Even if you're like, I don't care about such and such species, or why do these owls matter? It's not just one species. We're all interconnected. And when we start losing species, which we have been in a very high rate, and it's getting worse, all those things connect to each other. We're not like these little individual things, like my pictures, all like individual. I mean, they look individual, right? But I bet if I knocked one down up there, it's going to knock into all the rest and make them fall. And maybe a couple will be standing, but it's going to wreck everything. We have to reduce our waste and pollution. Okay, so we can do these things as individuals. We can make a change and commitment to change in ourselves and try to push for that change and educate others. Wind power. Where I grew up, there's tons of these all along Lake Erie, providing more wind power. It's great. It's great. Plant a tree. Maybe that's something when we're all back together, we can find a space and do it together, and we can plant our tree together. I would like that. So let's look at some big ideas. We could rely more on renewable energy from the sun, including indirect forms of solar energy such as wind. Okay, we have wind. I know we haven't talked about this yet, but the reason why we have wind and temperature changes is because of the uneven heating surface of the earth and the movement of that heated air, and flowing water. So like dams and hydroelectric power, to meet most of our heating and electricity needs, we need to move to that. We can protect biodiversity by preventing the degradation of Earth species, ecosystems, natural processes, and restoring areas that we've degraded. So like protecting these areas where we know species are at risk, or any area, because we don't want new species to become at risk. And we can help sustain Earth's natural chemical cycles, so the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, phosphorus cycle, oxygen, water, by reducing the production of waste and pollution and not overloading our natural systems with harmful chemicals, and not removing natural chemicals faster than those chemical cycles can replace them. So that's kind of our little talk about this first unit on sustainability and kind of an introduction to the things that we're going to be talking about this year. I really encourage you to come with questions, come with ideas, and we can discuss them. I want to discuss with you all the things that we've talked about. And I hope it kind of helps you understand the need for change and why so many people and governments are talking about change and pushing for it, and why you should too. So I hope that it helps you understand what we're talking about, and I will see you soon.